Welcome to the Falmouth Chamber of Commerce.
The Falmouth Chamber is dedicated to working on behalf of our members to make Falmouth a better place to live, work, and conduct business. We are committed to developing the economic, cultural, educational, and civic interests of our community and welcome the support from all organizations to achieve our combined goals. Whether you call Falmouth home, are a summer resident, or a visitor, we hope you take advantage of all that the Chamber has to offer.
Hi, I'm Bob from Crane Appliance. Since 1983, as a family-owned company, our goal has been simple: to give our neighbors of the Cape and Islands a great shopping experience. Rest easy knowing our professional team will listen to your needs and help you pick out the perfect appliances. We'll take care of everything throughout the sale, delivery, and installation process. And we even have our own in-house service department. Crane Appliance, we call the Cape and Islands home.
Carlson Printing for all your printing needs. 508-548-7303 or toll free at 1-800-696-7303. Our email address is carlsonprinting@aol.com. Carlson Printing for all your printing needs.
Hosting services for fctv.org are provided by MegaNet Communications. MegaNet offers a wide array of internet services including Mega Backup Cloud Service, server co-location, T1, fiber, Metro Ethernet, as well as telephone services such as hosted PBX and digital voice. Their #1 goal is to keep your communications network up and running and allow you to focus on growing your business. 877-634-2638 or meganet
Mayflower Wind electric cable easements and other matters to be presented at the Energy Facilities Siting Board and Massachusetts Environmental Policy Act Regulatory Tribunals in connection with the proposed electric transmission cable Mayflower Wind. So I'm calling us to order, and I'm sorry, we usually meet down the hall, but today we're gonna be needing to use the screen. I'm gonna have to ask the general public to give us a moment to discuss this, if we could. We'll, as soon as we finish our executive session, we'll return to open session at 7 o'clock. I don't think we can start earlier. Can we?
Well, I think we're gonna need all of our half hour,
All right, very
actually,
well.
so I think we'll be okay.
Okay, I'll call us to order then. Do we need a vote of the board to go into executive
Yes.
session?
Yes.
So that was your motion, so I'll second your motion.
All those in favor of going to executive session?
Aye.
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 It's unanimous.
Aye.
Thank you. All right. All right, welcome everyone. We're just returning from executive session. I'm gonna call the open session back in order. And I hope you'll all join me in Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Does anybody have any particular items for recognition this evening? Here we are in the middle of March, and it occurred to me that we didn't really do much recognition for Black History Month in February. Kind of passed us by rather quickly. I've been watching Finding Your Roots, and it's Henry Louis Gates Jr., and I gotta say that show has given me more education about U.S. history than I've had in a long time. It's so interesting, you know, when they find families of people that had come from descendants of slavery, and they really had not much hope of finding any records, and that Mr. Gates and his team find out so much stuff. It's pretty incredible. And they had a story about the slavery after slavery. It was a story of this guy, I think his name was Henry Still, walking down a train track, and he got apprehended by a constable and became enslaved in a financial kind of a way. It's a very interesting history, and it's just my little recognition for, we may not have done anything really as a board in February, but at least I've been doing my homework to learn a little more about American history, so.
Yeah, I watched it, I think I watched the same program, and the story about peonage that
Yeah.
occurred after, you know, the slaves were essentially freed, is really.
It's troubling.
I mean, it gives you an entirely different picture of what was going on and what it's taken to get from Civil War to today.
And all the way up to the complicity of the president,
Yes.
and then the future presidents, Woodrow Wilson and his regressive policies that just, we take some steps forward and then some steps backwards. And I don't know about you guys, but when I was in school, that was not the history that we were learning.
Correct.
Well, the beauty is, we can have Black History for all 12 months of the year. We get to keep educating ourselves and working on important issues around equity and justice, and we should. I mean, I know we highlight it, and there's, nothing wrong with highlighting it, but it shouldn't, obviously, that type of history shouldn't be relegated to 1 month. So, so many wonderful resources that are out there for all of us, to do a quick dive or then a really deep dive into really understanding better, the history of our country and how we got to where we are today and what still needs to be done. Some really great, just amazing documentaries and educational resources that are out there.
There's some excellent books around healing racial trauma that I have read that are really incredible.
And this board didn't, but Angie did. She spent a whole month doing really important things in Woods Hole and beyond. So, and I think some of those things are, there's a lot that goes on year round. So we need to highlight that more so folks can have opportunities to engage, hopefully more in person as we get out of COVID and see people in real life.
Well, I just wanted to reflect on that. And announcements, we did just come out of an executive session where we did ask our staff to petition to intervene in the Mayflower Wind zoning issues that are before us. And so we will take an active role in engaging that process. Additionally, we've set a tentative schedule for a public outreach and a public forum on wind coming to Falmouth. We don't really have a lot to share. It's been very preliminary, even though Mayflower seems to be moving along pretty far. And contrary to what some folks might believe, we really haven't even considered any financial consideration. We're still working on the siting and the community impacts. We haven't even addressed the finances yet, and we don't intend to until we get the other things in order. So I just want to let folks know that that will be hopefully coming up. We're going to try to get something going in April, select board, public discussion in April, hopefully, and then the real public forum, late April, early May. Meet with the select board again in May and June. So it's an aggressive schedule, but we're going to try to start having some public discussion so people can at least know what we don't know. That's really what it's going to be. So next is other announcements. Are there other announcements? Oh, that Thursday, March 24th, regarding Mayflower, there's going to be a public hearing on the Energy Facilities Siting Board. And so if anybody's interested, that meeting and the meeting link to that will be a Zoom link. It's posted on the town website for those interested in that subject. And now we have, unless there's any other announcements, we'll have public comment. I see some folks that are likely suspects. Mr. Finneran?
You're a likely suspect. How do you feel about that?
As usual.
I have a comment and questions. It goes back to the last meeting here. I wasn't at the Saturday meeting. I had something I had to do. I guess that would have been Monday, the 28th of February, or yes. But at the end of the evening, Mr. Suso felt the need to make a statement rebutting, if you will, a letter in the Enterprise regarding the town's use of the SAFER grants. I'm a bit confused as to his answer, and a little disappointed with the tone of the answer, to be honest with you. But most of the people familiar with these grants know that positions have to be permanent, which obviously they would be. And then Mr. Suso went on to say that it was against state law for him to apply for these grants if we in fact had the money. And I'm not the one that makes $220,000 a year running the town, and neither is the person that wrote the letter questioning you in the first place. But if we in fact had the money and weren't eligible for these SAFER grants, how can, again, on the other hand, you come after us for $1 million tax override to pay for these positions? There seems to be a bit of incongruence there, and maybe sometime in the future you can provide an adequate explanation. I understand that tonight does not allow that, but as I said, should have been able to address this the last time, and it doesn't make sense to me. Didn't find your answer complete. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment this evening? Okay. We can pass them
If you give us the whole pile, we'll do it.
Just give us the pile, we'll separate it.
out. Just give us a pile, we can.
Oh, is that one for you? Yeah, we're good, thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to,
Thank you.
hi everyone, my name's Dave Moriarty, Falmouth resident. I just wanted to read this into the record, to the Board of Selectmen, March 14th, 2022, regarding the MLP, the municipal light plant. A legal structure in Massachusetts law that allows a town like Falmouth to build and operate a fiber optic network. On January 15th, 2022 Select Board meeting, I asked if the proposed article for creating the Falmouth Municipal Light Plant could be written for broadband only. The board responded no. On February 28th, 2022, the Select Board meeting met to approve the articles for town meeting. On March 5th, 2022, the Select Board meeting, it was determined by the town attorney, Frank Duffy, that the article could have been written for broadband only, and the board voted to approve without restriction. Please include this correspondence in the minutes of the March 14th, 2022 meeting. Sincerely, Dave Moriarty. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moriarty. Anybody else for public comment? Mr. Langerfelder?
Thank you. I'm Wayne Lingefelter. I'm the Executive Director of the Falmouth EDIC, and I'm appearing here on behalf of the EDIC. Is that me, or?
Oh, she's going to time you. But
Oh, you're setting me up. As I think most of you know, the Falmouth EDIC is in the early stages of exploring some opportunities to develop a vacant parcel that's it controls at the Falmouth station. The EDIC board believes that there's been some inaccurate and incomplete information circulated about this work, and so I'd like to take this opportunity just to share a few points for the benefit of the select board. Our efforts on this work began last fall with a community meeting. We extended 60 invitations by mail to community leaders, business leaders, and residents within a quarter mile of the station. We were pleased that a total of 30 people, approximately 30 people, attended 2 meetings that we held at that time. The primary consensus of that meeting was this, that the site could represent a unique opportunity to help address the housing crisis in Falmouth, given its unique proximity to Main Street. Using this input and the resources we secured from a mass development grant, we took 3 months to develop 3 conceptual plans. 2 of those plans included build options, and 1 was an open space option. Due to mass development regs at the time, we then held a virtual stakeholders meeting at the end of January, where we presented our work and took questions from the audience. There were approximately 30 community members attending that virtual meeting. It was intended to be an hour in length, and it exceeded that with approximately 45 minutes dedicated to audience question and answers and comment. Since that time, we've done additional follow-up with several of the community participants to address the questions that were raised. So the EDIC board wants the select board to understand several important facts. First, all the work done to date is preliminary and our plans are conceptual. Second, we have significant work ahead to understand all of our options and secure community input. And we know that this work is going to take years, not months, for it to become reality. So the EDIC board is committed to an open and transparent process. And while I'm sure will not satisfy everyone, I believe to date we have in large measure achieved this objective and will continue to strive to be better as we progress our work. So I just want the select board to know that we would welcome the opportunity to appear before this board in the future to share our information as part of a formal agenda if you so deem appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Were you looking for, come on up, sir. We do try to keep it to 2 minutes if you could. A little bit of latitude, but that's the goal.
Yes, sir. Chairman Brown, members of the Select Board, thank you for your opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Matt Daubertine, and I'm a 2-year resident of Falmouth. I've been coming here for 30 years, visiting my parents, and I decided that in the latter part of my life, I wanted to settle here and become a permanent resident. I worked in local government for 30 years, and I understand that this is the level of government that touches people's lives the most on a daily basis. And I understand the hard work and the sacrifice that it takes to do the job properly. And I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you to all of you, and thank you to the staff of Falmouth. It's hard work, and it takes a commitment and an understanding of the challenges and the balancing and the trade-offs to be able to properly execute and deliver the services that it takes to run a town. Specifically, I came to talk tonight about the Shellfish Propagation Program that's run by the Marine and Environmental Services Division. I wanted to give special thanks tonight to Chuck Martinson, Christina Lovely, and Janice Simmons. I volunteered with the program for the first time last summer, and in my time that I worked with local government, I had a lot of opportunities to work with volunteers, community advocacy groups, nonprofits, and the experience that I had as a resident working with this program was wonderful. I felt valued, I knew my job, the staff was always organized every time I showed up, and they took the time every time we began a certain task to help us really understand how the work that we were doing that day fit into the objectives of the larger program. For me, as, again, a resident interfacing with the town of Falmouth, I understand the cultural value of the Shellfish Propagation Program for Greater Cape Cod and our region. I understand the economic value of the Shellfish Propagation Program, not only for the commercial fishermen, the restaurants, the fish markets, et cetera, and then, of course, the environmental benefits of this program, specifically for water quality goals for the town of Falmouth. And so I just wanted to say thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
you.
Any more public comments this evening? Welcome, come on up.
Hi, my name is Susan Ucholi. I'm a full-time resident of Falmouth. I live on Depot Ave. And I'm here to be opposite of you. EDIC's proposed construction at the Falmouth Station site will not preserve, protect, or enhance my neighborhood. Quite the opposite. Depot Ave is a small 2-lane street. In less than half a mile, we access 3 cultural centers, 2 sports facilities, a physical therapy practice, a school, a newspaper, a fuel storage center, a bus depot, a restaurant, the Shining Sea bike path, which was used by 250,000 people last year, lawyers, architects, 3 business offices, car repair and sales, and a gas station, and an inn. All of these wonderful resources on that street bring their own problems with them. One of them is buses, school buses, shuttle buses, commuter buses, any kind of bus goes in and out of that tiny street, and they have to navigate around the gas tankers that can't quite get out onto Depot Ave and make a turn without using a cone in the public parking. Not a problem. We've all learned to navigate this over the years. But this, I think, will be the final straw to being safe and able to really enjoy my end of Falmouth. Not to mention the 1,700 spot parking space for the Steamship Authority, which will abut that, and the every 3-minute shuttles in the summer down Palmer Ave that clog the far end and exit to Depot Street, Depot Ave. And the wonderful plays and performances at Highfield that completely block the street, sometimes for an hour at a time. We all enjoy them, but we're used to dealing with this. Adding construction and any more traffic to this area, I think would be awful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is that it for public comment? Okay. Now we have the town manager's preliminary report, Mr. Suso.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple items. I noted that Cape Cod Regional Transit Authority Administrator Tom Cahir has just joined us, and we're pleased to have him here this evening for a presentation to the board on CCRTA's pilot program on digital bus schedules. So that will be unfolding shortly. Also working with Fire Chief Tim Smith, we've transmitted to the board a suggested minor but important policy clarification related to fire station staffing for later in the meeting. And at the request of Falmouth Water Stewards, we'll be entertaining a suggestion for an informational piece on the town's nutrient management bylaw for possible inclusion in upcoming water bills. And those are my preliminary comments, Mr. Chairman. Supplemental ones to come later.
Thank you, Mr. Suso.
Thank you.
We have a wetlands dock hearing this evening.
I can read the announcement if
Yes,
you want me
please,
to.
certainly. I'll tell you what it is. First of all, this is a wetlands dock hearing. Nicholas and Amy Lowell, removal of an existing pier and construction and maintenance of a seasonal timber pier with the float and pile pipes with disc feet in the waters of Coonamessett Pond at 27 Adamancet Road, Hatchville.
That's essentially the public hearing, and I'll just say that that was published noting that we would meet and have that hearing today on March 14th at 7:30 PM in the Select Board Meeting Room, Falmouth Town Hall, 59 Town Hall Square. And that was published per the Select Board. It was published February 25th, 2022, March 4th, 2022 in the Falmouth Enterprise.
Are you here to represent the applicant?
Thank you. One question, where does this USB go?
Okay.
There's one in here, I don't know if this one comes out.
Mr. Johnson, the computer wizard will help you.
IT specialist.
I've got 3 sets of plans here.
Thanks.
All right, thank you for the board for having me tonight. For the record, Nate Gosharian with Holmes & McGrath, presenting on behalf of the client. So the project that I'm presenting tonight is pretty straightforward. There are 2 components. Just open up. So 2 components to this project. Removing a pier that currently exists on the property and the installation and construction and maintenance of a new pier. I'll go over the construction methodology in a second, but I'll go over the locus in general and some of the protected resources near the property. So the locus that we're talking about tonight is 27 Adamancet Road. This is a private residentially developed parcel of land. It's about 47,000 square feet in size. The property currently features a single-family house, cottage, rather steep bank, stairs leading down to an inland bank, and this currently existing pier right here. And then wetland resources on or within 100 feet of this property include inland bank and Coonamessett Pond. The property also currently features 200 feet of frontage on Coonamessett Pond. So this pier right here, which we are proposing to remove, has been as is for about 20 years. The pier in general, or a pier in general, has actually been on this property since 1968. This is an aerial photo of the locus from 1968. We can see that there's a deck right here, a pier right here. So the new pier that we are proposing is a little bit larger. It features a boardwalk that is 40 by 40 feet, and the proposed pier at the end is 8 by 12. One of the reasons for the size difference is that Falmouth wetland regulations required water depth of 3 feet at the end of the pier. All the wood used in the construction will be non-CCA treated wood, and the structure will be fortified and seated on the sediment of Coonamessett Pond with 8-inch circular feet. I would just remind the board that historically, there has always been, for the most part, a pier present on this property. And with that, I'll conclude my presentation and hand it back over, and I'm happy to take any questions.
I think the presentation in the packet was pretty clear. Are there questions from the board?
No, we didn't really have any feedback from the public. I didn't anyway. I don't know if anyone else on the board did.
I did not either. And so,
We also got the report from the Conservation Commission.
Right.
Basically provided their restrictions, and so I think everything's in order.
I believe so. Does the whole dock get removed seasonally, or just the float?
Great question. Yes, the whole dock. It's a seasonal dock, yep.
But not the pilings, probably, right?
No, and good point. There are actually no pilings. It's 2-inch pipe piles, so there's no jetting or driving of piles.
Those are like
or
helical
dredging.
piles that screw in?
They screw in to the side of the boardwalk, and then they sit on 8-inch circular feet. So it essentially sits flat on top of the sediment of Coonmessett Pond.
Oh,
so it doesn't actually go into the sediment
doesn't
at all.
embed.
Correct.
Oh, so it's really seasonal.
Very seasonal, yeah.
Huh.
Very easy to
Interesting.
modulate and remove.
All right. Any other questions? Is there any questions or comments from the public? Seeing none?
I would move that we close the hearing.
Second.
All those in favor of closing the hearing?
Aye.
Aye.
And is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve? Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
It's a pretty simple one. Thank you very
Yep,
much.
Yeah, thank you for your time,
Thank you.
everybody.
Appreciate all the information in advance.
Thank you.
Want the plans back?
Yeah, sure.
Do we need to keep a record? We don't.
Should keep one set.
You should keep one.
set.
Okay,
Keep
we'll
one
keep
to
one.
sign. Yeah.
Got another one back for you.
Okay.
There you go.
Here you go.
One more.
Next, we have business, Cape Cod Regional Transit Authority digital bus schedule signage. This was originally researched by the Transportation Committee, I understand. And I invited if any of the Transportation Committee members would be willing to join us, but they declined because they
Thank you.
think they were hopeful that this would come back to them first. But I imagine it must be a matter of timeliness that we're taking it up directly, is that?
Well, it requires the board's approval before we could proceed. That's part of the rules of the CCRTA.
Right.
So it comes to you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Welcome, Mr. Kerr.
Mr. Chairman, how are you?
Good, thanks.
Yeah, this is just a matter of, as Sam knows, as a member of our board, we're constantly monitoring our overall service and looking at ways to improve technology across the Cape, and we're doing our capital investment program. So this digital signage is one that we've been looking at across the Commonwealth, other RTAs are using. It's been very helpful and informative to the patrons in the various communities. So we've invested some funds to purchase some digital signage, and we want to try to introduce 2 pilot programs probably this fall, because we just submitted the plan. And we have had communications with the Falmouth Transportation Committee, and they constantly, we communicate quite regularly on issues in Falmouth and how we can be helpful. As you know, Mr. Chairman, we've talked to you quite a few times on matters.
Right.
And they were interested in the digital signage. So we have a board meeting scheduled for 2 weeks from, 2 or 3 weeks from now. I was going to inform Sam, I haven't even talked to him yet about it, because it isn't imminent, but in the fall, we'll probably be introducing them, 3 to 5 signs within 2 or 3 communities across the Cape, and the Transportation Committee indicated that they would like to see that. We have, of course, the Sea Line that runs through here on the hour throughout the year, and the Whoosh bus, which runs in the summertime. And we thought at the appropriate time, probably sometime before summer or in the summer, we could talk to whomever to determine where you'd best like to see these digital signs. They're state-of-the-art, where you could even put a QR code, on it and a phone up to it, and learn about our website and get a trip planner immediately, learn where our buses are. It's pretty neat and convenient for the many customers that use our service. So that's really not a lot to say, but that's basically what we're thinking of, and we think it would be nice if we had 3 to 5 of those signs here in Falmouth somewhere at the appropriate locations that we can determine at a later date.
Sounds good. Anybody have questions?
I just have a question on ridership. Do you have any statistics or numbers on how many people use CCRTA?
Well, we
buses?
provide 1.6 million trips a year pre-pandemic. And of course, the first year of the pandemic, we saw significant reductions, as did everyone across the country on transit. We're back, as of this morning, we're back to about 75 to 78% of our 2019 ridership. So, and we've undertaken some marketing plans to really encourage people onto public transportation. The high gas prices don't hurt that either.
Sure.
Whenever the gas prices go up anywhere, you always see a tick up in public transportation. And, you know, we have a good marketing plan where we're trying to encourage people not only for that, but for greenhouse gas emissions, to reduce that, to use public transportation. Even though our buses are still biodiesel, we're also investing in electric buses. So we're doing all the right things, but the ridership is just ticking up to pre-pandemic stages now. So
Sure, and I wouldn't hold the COVID years against you. Trust me, I was just curious.
thank you.
I was just going to say that I think, and those numbers sort of bear that out, but part of, I mean, we just do not have a system that really can get folks around. There's so many people who do not have access to vehicles. And so I think this is like a type of advertisement, right? Because if folks aren't from here and they're going about their daily lives and they're seeing this, I mean, part of it is obviously to give the information so folks know when the schedules are coming for buses. But another piece is to just raise awareness that this is a resource that's in our community. I mean, there are so many individuals who do not have, I mean, I'm at the courthouse many days of the week. People are coming from all over the Cape, and it takes them hours to try and get to Falmouth. But the only reason they can do it is because of you know, your bus service, and that's how they get there. And so, and there are a lot of folks who don't know that that's a resource that's available, right? And you hear that, and they're spending a ton of money on an Uber from Yarmouth to Falmouth. And these are individuals who sometimes are really already struggling, you know, just financially. So I see this as being a really great way to, number one, just modernize the system and let people be able to plan their day. And number two, just raise some awareness that this is there for year-round visitors, for our seasonal workers who certainly are not coming here with cars. Our J1, you know, our students aren't coming here with vehicles, and our H2B visitors aren't coming here. And so it helps people know that this is there and really just get that word out there.
Well,
I think it's a great idea.
Thank you very much. I think it's a very good point. When I've been at the RTA now for 12 years, and I recall when I arrived, there was some sort of survey that was conducted that indicated that 14% of Cape residents knew there was a public transportation system on the Cape. I mean, that has significantly increased over the past 10 years. Our ridership has gone up every single year. And the technology continues to improve dramatically. So, like signage and other things that make it easier for people to understand. Plus, we're constantly pushing the envelope to try to make people aware. We have relationships with the court. We have shelters on the court locations and the like. So you're right. It's making people aware, and we're very cognizant that that's an important role. And you know, Sam does a great job for us and supports us on a lot of our initiatives. Sometimes they have to rein us back, but for the most part, they're very supportive.
This is great.
And I guess I should disclose that after I retired from teaching, I drove buses for CCRTA for 3 years. So I can attest to, you know, what Megan has alluded to. I mean, there's an awful lot of this community. I think we assume that everybody drives. Not the case. There's a significant part of the population that are dependent on somebody else to take them places, and they're usually not very affluent. So paying for taxis is kind of out of their budget. And I could, you know, having driven people like that from all over the Cape to places that mostly for, you know, groceries and doctor's appointments and hospital appointments, a lot of drug addicts who have lost their license because of their addiction need to be taken to their counseling sessions and what have you, or to their methadone treatment facilities. All of those are services that are provided by CCRTA, and it is essential. I mean, I think it's an essential service that we have available to us that many communities do not have, at least certainly not at the level of efficiency that the CCRTA provides.
Thank you, Sam. And I just wanted to Megan's point about awareness. We developed in-house in the last year what we call Smart Dot. It's an app And it's very, very similar to Uber and Lyft, except it's $3 for the transportation trip, which is considerably lesser cost. Plus, our drivers, as Sam used to be, are well-trained, and we demand safety, and they go through a rigorous training. But in a matter of 20 minutes, you can get, through the app, you can have one of our smart dot vehicles come and pick you up and take you, ideally, to one of our fixed route services. It's a regional service. It gets you to a fixed route or to a place where you can get other transportation. It's currently being used in Yarmouth and Barnstable with tremendous success, and we hope to expand that further now that we're moving into the next session, so.
Wonderful.
Good news.
Thank you for the support that you've given us, and Julian as well, and all the folks in Falmouth have been helpful to us, and anything we can do to, if you monitor the wash and the like, we're happy to make changes or whatever that make more sense to the community, so.
So folks go on to the App Store and download the Smart Dart app. They can get picked up at home and brought to their nearest bus stop?
Yes.
That's
Yes,
great.
Not just bus stop, but anywhere within reason in the community.
Will that come to Falmouth soon, do you think?
Well,
That's my question.
It's been in Barnstable and Yarmouth for 10 months now. And I always kind of say Falmouth is next. So I think when we do expand to another community, like this pilot program for the digital signage is going to be Falmouth and another community. But the Smart Dart has been so successful with more people, getting the app that I hope to have it Cape-wide, within a year or so. So I'll make sure that Falmouth is on the priority list.
That'd be great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, because, even because people go into the beaches in the summer, And Smart Dart, come get you, take you to the beach, you don't have to park.
Yes,
so.
it's wonderful.
And Dennis, that's a big concern, so we're really working on that, and we'll keep you informed, Sam, as we go forward.
Great. Well, I would entertain a motion to move forward with finding locations for these, if there is such a motion.
Or support the location of these on the bus routes.
We'll have to determine the locations, but you
There's
can
gonna be
work with
3
the
of 'em.
transportation committee, and they can flush that out and bring it back to us, right?
Yeah, we're happy to come back to board. We just need your green light to go ahead to pursue it.
And I would move
So,
that you have the green light to do that.
And you guys,
Yeah, it probably won't be to the fall till we have the signs in place, but
So I have a
Thank you
motion,
for-
and is that a second from
I
you, Sam?
seconded.
Oh,
Nancy
second.
did, yeah.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Mr.
Great.
Chair.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Thank you
it.
very
Thank you,
much,
Tom.
Tom.
Remind me, I have a question to ask you about CCRT.
Okay, next we have a request for sign variance for off-premise promotional signs for the Falmouth Commodores baseball clinics and Falmouth Commodores game day signs, late April to August 14th, 2022. Well, we do the same thing every year.
I'd move
Any
approval.
questions?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye. It's not summer without the Commodores game, so.
An easy one. Discussion of nutrient management bylaw.
No,
Oh,
we're
excuse me,
skipping.
follow-up discussion on fire station staffing policy.
Almost.
Let's get by that. So I noticed that we do have a proposed adjustment to our very short, simple policy, which was voted by us last, probably 2 years ago now.
last November.
Okay. Oh, yeah, we adopted it last November. All right. We talked about it a couple years ago at the high school, and then we finally put it on paper. So this proposed clarification is continue to pursue a staffing plan which includes the assignment of 2 firefighters that start a shift to the West Falmouth Fire Station until the construction of a new replacement fire station is completed. That was the original language that we adopted last November, I guess. And then further select board policy clarification is proposed to say, continue to pursue a staffing plan which includes the assignment of 2 firefighters that start a shift to the West Falmouth Fire Station until the construction of the new proposed Northwest Fire Station is completed. So that's helpful, but I was thinking of something a little more in detail.
I had some edits as well.
Okay, you want
Do
to
you
go
want
ahead?
to do yours first?
Well, mine is pretty similar to a piece of paper that I shared with the board, which is in our packet. I feel like we really need to consider a select board policy of, I think, really some massive hiring to give the chief the ability to fully staff. I think that maybe we need to make a stronger commitment to the number of firefighters that we are hiring and paying in this town. I think when I look at the fact that we had an override for 8 firefighters was designed to bring on 2 new staff members. That's a good step. But now when we're looking at opening a new fire station, which when we look at the staffing plan for it, it's called for 4 firefighters. That would mean that we need to hire 16 more people, in my view, if we want to keep everything that we have going. So that's a huge commitment. And right now, we've got 3 firefighters hired for the coming year. And honestly, I don't know that that does any more for us than just get us fully staffed for what we have now, because we are always facing shortages. It's a natural occurrence to have people out of work for one reason or another, deployments or injuries. It's a rough job. People get injured a lot, I understand. So I'm interested to know what the board feels about including in the policy the staffing level that we feel like is needed in our own assessment, and propose that. And I want to hear what the board has to say about that. I mean, we're looking at, if we hire 16 more firefighters in order to keep the 5 stations that we have open now and open the new station with 4, 16 firefighters is a lot. It's a big commitment. It's almost $2 million a year. And even then, if we take that next step and open that new fire station in potentially January of 2024, then we're going to be stretched again for staff, in my own opinion. Now, I'm not a fireman, and I never have been, but I've been looking at this for a few years, and this is the way I see it. I think that we need to have a plan in place to hire 16 by January of 2024, and then we should continue to plan for another probably 8 more, or at least 4 more going forward, to relieve what I perceive to be probably stressful time of trying to staff 6 fire stations. It's a big proposal. We're going to spend $10 million on a station. We should make a plan to have the staff on hand to man it. That's my position. And what are the thoughts of the board? Big commitment. Yes, Mr. Patterson?
I agree with you. I think that's the responsible thing to do. We're not setting a deadline. It's something we have to grow to.
I'm wondering, to what extent is the importance of us having a policy on this if it's up to the fire chief to staff his stations?
It's up to us to provide the resources and budget this number of personnel so the chief has the ability to do the staffing.
So we would direct the town manager, our policy would direct town staff, Jennifer, Julian, to look at how we're adding that in, right? So that's what, at the end of the day, it is going to be the chief who's.
Wouldn't we do that anyway? Do we need a policy? I guess I'm not understanding why we need a specific policy for the firefighters. Would we want something similar for like the police officers as well?
Well,
what's the difference?
Honestly, I think I've said this before. I think we need to address this issue now, and then we can turn our attention to the police department afterwards and try to help them with their staffing levels. Right now, their biggest problem is finding people that are willing to serve as police officers. And maybe the civil service exit will help us with that if we're successful with that. But that's a whole nother matter. And the fact that we're building a new fire station right now, that I just don't want to get into the position where we have a brand new fire station sitting in Hatchville and then have to make a decision of which building to staff because we didn't plan well enough to have enough people on hand to staff all the stations. If we want to concede that West Falmouth's old and we're going to just close it, we should come out and say that, or make that part of our plan. But if we don't hire enough people to staff all 6 stations, that's what's going to happen by default, because if we have a brand new shiny $10 million station and then an old beat up one and not enough people to staff all 6, it seems like a logical conclusion that we would probably close a station.
I guess, let me just play devil's advocate for a minute. We are talking about an enormous amount of money, okay? Unless we, to go back to sort of my comment, I think at the last meeting, unless we go ahead and we really take another look at safer grants, okay? And even then, it's still going to be a lot because those don't fund people forever. That is a bridge, okay? So it's doesn't solve our problem. So it's an enormous amount of money from our budget. Now, we have our numbers have been healthy over the last few years, even through COVID. But we know that there are times that are lean, and part of why we're here is because in the lean times, it was really lean, and we didn't strategize and restaff quickly, and sometimes the funds weren't there, and when they were, this wasn't, where we were heading. We should have been doing this sooner, but it's a lot of money that won't then go to, if you're talking about 16 new firefighters and then 4 more after that, you're talking about 20 firefighters within the next 5 years or so. I think even less. You're saying
Or we're talking about delaying the construction of Hatchville unless we want to put ourselves in a box and have more buildings than we can man.
All right, for lack of fear of looking like I don't know what I'm talking about.
Nobody does, don't worry. We're just saying things.
I guess I'm not understanding why a policy is important if we're going to be revisiting an operating budget every year and potentially saying, okay, next, for sake of argument, new station in Hatchville is going to open, let's just say, January of 2024. So that means in the operating budget the year before, we would look forward and say, okay, now we know we're going to need 4 or 5 new firefighters, correct? Just throwing this out there. So if we're going to do that, then I guess I'm not understanding why we want to make a policy now.
Well, because right now we have 3 firefighters coming on next year. And if we had this policy in place previously, we probably would have been shooting for 6.
So the policy is going to then drive what we decide to do with the operating budget every year.
Correct.
Instead of just reviewing.
The finance committee might say we just aren't, not there, we can't do it. But our policy will be the guiding force of, we say, we realize that this is a need that we have, and we identify it and create a policy, we can have something to work toward.
Now this is starting to make more sense to me. Thank you.
I think we also need to amend our strategic plan priority.
I agree.
Because if you're thinking about a policy and it doesn't mesh with your strategic plan priority, to me, it doesn't make sense.
Definitely right.
So while I see the clarification on the strategic plan priority, I think I would amend it to be a little bit clearer. And I think that the select board, or whatever entity that is, commits to a fully staffed, operational West Falmouth Fire Station unless or until, and I've said this before, the town of Falmouth votes to build a combined Northwest Station to be staffed with 4 firefighters. So it doesn't change your number, right? But what it does do is it makes our strategic plan priority really clear. And I don't want to write a policy if we don't have a priority that makes sense and is really clear.
Okay. I think the policy goes towards the commitment to the hiring. I think that's the biggest part of it. And it may not be practical to think that we can pull $2 million out of the air and make it happen, but I'm just trying to come to grips with reality that that's what I see as.
Yeah, I see the policy as not being something that's, it's not a policy that is, this happens on this day, because that's not how budgets for municipalities work. Things happen. I mean, we find asbestos somewhere and money has to immediately go to that. We have an enormous, natural disaster. I mean, we're talking year after year. So a policy drives focus. To me, a policy drives your commitment to getting something done, recognizing that it may not be we're hiring 16 total by 2024, right? But we're aiming to continuously focus on this area in order to carry out sort of what you're talking about at a strategic plan level. You're talking about policy level, to keep West Falmouth staffed, for every shift until we have a Northwest. Right? I mean,
Right.
That's what.
And so policy needs to be broad.
Yes.
Because once you box yourself in, you're going to have a problem because things do change. But the strategic priority can be very specific. And I think if we continue to have it sort of not specific, then we're not committing to staffing West Falmouth. That's just how I see it.
Well, I thought your comment was very appropriate. I think you pretty much covered what should be the policy for the town and for us to endorse. So I would be happy to second that, if that's what you're proposing.
Second the motion for the strategic priority?
But I think Sam.
As you stated.
Or the, yes, how I wrote it here.
And with the idea that, you know, we would continue to staff West Falmouth until such time as we built the Northwest Station. That is part of the comment that you made, and that I would want that included.
That's fine for the strategic plan, but how's the policy gonna actually lead to action unless it has some kind of goals and dates?
Well, but, I'm sorry, but you're not gonna be able to determine the date at which the Northwest Station is open and ready to be staffed.
Oh, I'm not really concerned about the date of that, and honestly,
Well, that's
I
what
don't
you're
think
just saying. You want specific dates, and I'm saying, I think the
saying as far-
policy should be sufficient.
I'm saying for staffing levels.
You mean for hiring?
For hiring. Seeing how we do have a specific date for a fire station to be built, I think there needs to be a staffing plan to go along with it.
Well, policy should drive the budget.
Right.
And if there's a trade-off that has to be made because of something that we didn't anticipate, an unknown, fine, then we'll have to do that as we go along.
Are you waiting?
No.
She's just got her hand up.
No, I was gonna say something, but I realized I don't want to say it.
So I would like a policy that says something, so we have Nancy's edit to our strategic plan. And then I would like a policy that said, and I'm just, you know, this isn't how exactly it would be, but a policy says that it is a priority of the select board to ensure that we have appropriate staffing for a 6-station model until such time as a Northwest Station is completed, because we're going to be running 6 stations for a period of time. And, you know, as such, that when we're budgeting, that is a priority to hire staff in order to keep, you know, all of our stations open and staffed, you know, full-time, right?
On a mandatory basis, not a voluntary basis.
Yeah, we can just say on a mandatory basis, or however we want to say it. I don't know if there are implications with using the word mandatory with union stuff. So let's just, but being clear that we're not talking about as available. We're talking about staffing it in that direction.
Full-time.
The reality is that can't happen tomorrow. We already have heard from the chief, and I think I saw him here somewhere in the back, that we're moving in that direction. When the last time he was here, when we talked about when we onboard the folks who are there but can't be at full power, they can't kind of take on regular duties, we'll be that much closer. So I would like a policy that outlines this as a priority of the board, and that we expect that, you know, our budgeting is going in that direction, right? Because again, I get a little uncomfortable, and let me just say, the last piece of it would be, I do want to go back and look at the role of safer grants in doing that. If there's any way to lessen the burden to the taxpayers for a period of time with some of that onboarding, I'd like to take a look at again, because I think you know, we can see if we will be able to use that for our benefit. It's different from the override, not reopening that discussion. I think that was a commitment by the town to do something very big permanently. And that's what that was. And that was, I think, the public spoke very loudly about that. So anyway, I would like to see a policy that says that, you know.
So can I just ask a question? Am I hearing that the consensus of the board is to change our vision to 6 fire stations unless or until a Northwest combo is decided upon by the town? Is that what I'm hearing?
That's what you're hearing from me, yes. And also, we got to keep in mind that it really doesn't matter whether or not we build Northwest combo anytime soon with regard to staffing. Because right now we have 2 in North and 2 in West. And if we're going to build a big new station, we're going to have 4. So it doesn't really impact the staffing per se as much as it impacts other resources.
And I agree that it doesn't, because
It's shifting.
it's 2 and 2 or 4, so we don't have to worry about that. But I think the point I'm trying to make is that, is there a commitment from this board to support the West Falmouth Station being open, fully operational, and manned unless or until there's a combo?
Yeah.
Because I
Yes.
think that, but I'm not sure that we've been clear about that.
I think we voted it a number, and said it a number of times. I think here's the problem. We then don't have enough people to do it. You know, we got the numbers last time.
Right.
Sometimes it's 70%. So the commitment sounds hollow when we can't get up to the 100%. We understand why we haven't been able to get up to the 100%. And I think the chief and his staff have been, the fact that we could get that many people during COVID is pretty unheard of. And I've spoken to other municipalities who are struggling because of civil service and COVID, and they're pretty impressed that we were able to onboard that many people. But we're coming up with we were coming from such a place of a deficit. So it's like we need miracles and miracles. So I think that if we can say those same words and then have it really staffed because we have more people, that means something more. And the difference here is we had language that said as
resources
available, as
Right.
resources
Well, and
allow.
the other issue is I think we've been stuck on a 5-station model, right?
And which would be fine if we built
If
that
it's- right.
new fifth station.
But we're not even close to that yet. That
Right.
idea is way out there.
We haven't even
Right
started,
now
we
we're
haven't broken
talking
ground
about-
for the
Right.
Hatchville.
Right
so.
now, we're talking about a Hatchville, we're not even considering.
Yeah.
And so I just think that we need to be very clear and very intentional about what this board sees moving forward.
Do you want to set a number for the goal? Or do you want to just say that you
I
want
don't-
these
what-
fire stations open?
Well, here's what I think would make sense, is to come back with, and I'm happy to work on it with you or with whomever, come back with some language for a policy. I don't want to just throw words out here. I mean, we've talked about if this board, if we vote in that general direction, we can actually come up with some draft language for our next meeting for a policy. We can vote the concept of it, come up with the actual wording, and vote it. And then I think we can also vote Nancy's
I think we can vote the amendment to the.
strategic plan.
We could vote that tonight. Unless you want to wait, bring it back as a package.
I don't think so, if the board is okay with the language that I brought.
Sam seconded your
Sam
motion,
seconded.
so.
Yeah, I
seconded.
Yeah.
Well, let's get that done tonight if the board is in favor of that.
And Mark has had his hand up.
Oh, did you want to speak, Mr. Finneran? Yeah. Oh, no.
Obviously, I fully endorse staffing all these stations, and West Falmouth, of course. But I think, and I've said this before, but I mean, your numbers are just wrong. As far as the Hatchville station goes, I'll go through the thing again. Downtown handles 52% of our calls with 6 men. East Falmouth handles 27% of all our calls with 4 men. North Falmouth handles 12% of the calls with 2 men. West Falmouth, if stationed, handles 5% of the calls with 2 men. And Woods Hole handles 4% of the calls with 2 men, always. I asked many times, I'm on that committee, and so much in that committee gets done by staff, and the members of the committee have nothing to do with it. Once a month, they present us what they came up with in their staff meeting. But I asked if we could simply contact McGrath and have them take all the data that they already have and then give us a number that projects how many calls are going to come out of Hatchville. And I say to you, it's no more than 7%. So there's absolutely no way you can justify having 4 men in that station. Arthur went as far as to count every house and property in Hatchville, and they amount to about 8% of the houses in this town. And if you read into the McGrath report, it's not a 1-for-1 because there's 3 or 4 or 5 addresses in this town that handle a large amount of the calls. The nursing homes, obviously, North Falmouth, Royal Megansett. That's why their numbers are up high at 12%. Downtown has a lot to do with Atria and Woodbriar. There's also Gosnold and the hospital. So it's not a 1-for-1 after that. The chief projected that there would be 10% of the calls answered in Hatchville, which is absolutely impossible. The numbers do not hold it out. And why we can't spend another $5,000 and have McGrath study that area and tell us how many calls, what volume of the calls are going to go there, and then you pursue an intelligent staffing. And for that matter, the size of that station is just too large. It's not warranted and it's not justified. And that's just a math trick. That's spending all the expired debt that we have. But you can't justify putting 4 men in that station and to make it your policy. The numbers just do not back it up. And as I said, we could easily have McGrath tell you that I'm either right or wrong, but that 10% number from the chief is absolutely incorrect. If that's the case, that you only need the 2 men there, we really only need 1 more. We got 3 coming. Is that correct?
No, we'd need 5 more.
5 more? Okay, well,
Only
regardless.
if you're accounting for people who, you know, you're gonna have some
Yeah.
percentage who are out for injured, military duty, whatever it might be.
But planning to staff that new fire station with 4 men is just completely uncalled for. And you can also see, you know, people, this is Walter's map, but people keep calling this place centrally located. And Walter did all this, but I stole a piece of string and a pen out front. And I mean, a great deal of the 3-mile radius from this station is in Sandwich and Mashpee. It just doesn't justify having 4 men in it if you got 2 men in West Falmouth and 2 men in North Falmouth. It's not there. The numbers don't bear it out. And why we're afraid to have the McGrath study, which is, you know, already paid for, basically. They have all the data, is beyond me.
Yes, Mr. Pedersen?
I don't see it as a static situation. You know, firefighters and equipment get moved around in the town. When somebody's out on a call, if there's a sense that the next highest probability of a call, they move people to that station so that they're in closer proximity. And that was always the complaint about West Falmouth, because people were being asked to go and cover, say, east, because some fire had occurred in that area or in the main.
Yeah, but
and so my point is this, that having 4 staff there doesn't mean they have to stay there or only answer calls that are within that region, if you will. They could be moved into any of those other stations to cover when those other stations have calls. And I see it as essentially having the reserve to make sure that our coverage across the town is continuous, or it comes closer to being what we really would like to see. So that's my defense of why I think it makes sense. While we're building a station, build it a modern station, but make sure that we have enough reserve there so that we can make sure the other stations are covered whenever they get overloaded or whenever their calls come in.
Well, the natural backup for that station would be East Falmouth and vice versa. I mean, to think that people here are going to go to West Falmouth, that's just, it's not possible.
Okay. Megan?
Well, I don't think, it is not the job of the select board, it's not the job of the public to staff. Okay, we can make policies about, we want every station to have personnel in the stations, period, okay? And we need to hire in order to do that. It is our chief, and if we had every department open to the select board, we are not experts, we certainly care about it, but we're not gonna tell the chief, yeah, you better put 6 here, and chief, you better put 5 here and 2 here. I think that's not good policy, it's not good public safety, and there's gonna be no experts in this field who tell us that we should be staffing public safety facilities by consensus of a select board. They're not gonna say that. We imbue that power to the chief for a reason. If he doesn't do a good job and things happen on his watch, then we address that. I mean, every chief knows that. They go to sleep every night worrying about that. It's the same thing with the police. We would not be telling the Chief Dunn, yeah, your cars need to run this route when they're in Sector 5. I mean, it's not feasible, it's not a good use of resource and time, and it's not a good use of the expertise. I think a policy is more broad. So to Mark's point, if call volume is a certain way, then we can look at that, or the chief is gonna staff appropriately. He's never gonna have an overabundance of personnel. It's not like he's gonna have so many you can just throw them around wherever he wants. It's always gonna be a squeeze, because that's just the reality. So I think the role of this board is confined to setting a policy about what we want open for facilities, and that we want to direct town management and move our budget in the direction that it fulfills that and meets that need. And that's sort of the end of that piece. I don't think we then tell the chief, you better put X number of people somewhere.
I agree with that. I just think that as a political body, it's up to us to identify that if we have a need, to create the political will and give the direction to the staff of where we think we need to go.
I agree. I'm just saying not down to the minutia of, chief, put 3 people here on Wednesday. I mean, I think that, you know, that goes too far.
I agree.
This whole process started when we hired McGrath. Their original job was to find a place and combine north and west. Upon them looking at all the data and the years of calls, they determined that we were missing the mark and that we needed a station in Hatchville. So we reversed direction on the word of the McGrath study that we invested $40,000 in, I believe it was. Now we're at the last mile, and all of a sudden McGrath's stuff is not viable.
No, that's not what I'm saying. But
Well,
first
why
of all,
would we not want to
Mark,
know
that-
the volume of calls that come out of that area? The data is there.
But we're talking apples and oranges. We
Not
need
really,
some more
because
staff.
the volume of calls are gonna determine the amount of staffing that you need in that building.
Right, but I think that we're saying we still have a deficit in firefighters. And
Oh,
our
absolutely.
policy is simply going to say, we need to staff so that we can keep all 6 stations open and staffed until such time as we build a Northwest. And going back, you know more than anybody, because you were a proponent of it, Hatchville did not come out of.
Oh, I
McGrath
understand
put their thumb
completely.
on it at the end, but Hatchville has been recognized
Forever.
for 30 years. We've been
And
talking about this.
anybody can look at that.
So it
map.
wasn't an enormous surprise that it was gonna be Hatchville.
No, absolutely. But anybody can look at this map as well and determine that there's 2 things going on here. You're building too big of a station and you're planning on staffing it with too many people. I mean, there's just other buildings in town that could use that extra staff more efficiently. And again, I say, why we don't have a number from the McGrath study after we spent all that money. We changed our direction and we went where we are, and now we're just going to abandon them to numbers that, quite frankly, aren't realistic. And I mean, those are just facts.
Yes, Sam?
Yeah, I understand what Mark is saying, and I kind of agree with him. It makes sense, but this is not going to happen instantaneously, Mark. There's going to be a period of time when everything is in transition, and I suspect it'll be 8 years before we get that northwest station built. And so between now and then, I think we need to have the resources in town to try to do the best we can to cover the response times that we think is appropriate. So therefore, I think cutting back on the new Hatchville station is not a good time. It's not a good time to do that. We need a little bit more reserve capacity, and it's going to give us, whether there's 4 there indefinitely, time will tell.
And even if it starts with 2, and we got a little more space than we
That's
need.
where you should set your bar.
Which it
starting with
probably,
2.
I mean, the reality is,
practical-
it
Oh, that's
probably
just
will
my
have
point.
that at some
The
point.
4 firefighters there is excessive. And to hire them at this present time is excessive. It taxes the taxpayer.
Right, but that's
too
why I
much.
don't think the policy's specific.
Well, I mean, it was, you were stating numbers earlier, and it was constant 4 men in Asheville.
All right.
It's just not justified.
I think
You can
we've-
easily find out with a call to McGrath.
You're right.
It seems
All right,
that no one wants to.
we don't need any more repetition.
We've got your point. But let some more folks talk, and including the chief, but nice that you get to hear all this, right? You can tell us what's what afterwards. Any other public comment from anybody here in attendance this evening? Yes, sir.
Just going to remind you of the time.
Okay.
Fewer than.
Right, if we can try to, I know it's.
Because
try to-
you've gone way over.
West Falmouth.
Right.
One of the things that I found in the McGrath report really erroneous was the actual house count in the West Falmouth what I call it a precinct, which the fire chief lays out the area in which the number of houses that they respond to. And if I remember right, I think it was something like 1,700 houses for West Falmouth. And the only way I could think of the error is I went to the federal voter precinct, not our precinct, but how they determine what West Falmouth, what the population is going to be. The population, if you go by the population that the federal government does, it only has a little piece of West Falmouth in it. If you look at it, it's very strange. And where Hatchville has a huge amount. So if McGrath took those numbers and used those as a population number, they'd be totally off. I took the assessor's maps and blew them up onto 8.5 by 11. And I stripped them and pasted them all together. And I went through the 5-minute response time, which goes pretty much what the fire chief has laid out for the area of, say, West Falmouth, what the response is in West Falmouth area. And instead of I think it was around 1,400 homes that the McGrath report had, there are 2,800 and some odd homes there. And when I did that was for West Falmouth. North Falmouth had 2,900 and some odd. And Hatchville had 3,100 homes in pretty much the same circles that I put up that the chief has, that he works with. So I look at the McGrath report and I'm saying, wow, they're off by 50%. That's a big number. I mean, if you're using those numbers for actual response to fires and stuff like that. So I just wanted to clear that up, and I'd be willing to show you the information.
Okay, thank you. So I think it's a pretty good start of a policy. Do you folks want to make comments from the chief? Or do you just want to take this in?
We're happy to listen.
Okay.
We need to do a vote, right?
Yeah. Did we make that policy clear enough for drafting for a future?
Policy that Nancy proposed?
Well, we already voted that one.
Yeah, we voted the change in the strategic plan priority piece, which I've written down.
I think
Well, I heard Megan say she wanted to work on
I will do that.
something
I
which we
will-
welcome, be quite happy to do if that would be agreeable.
Okay.
Happy to,
Certainly.
you and I can chat and we can just put some actual language for a policy together.
Okay, based on our conversation here today. All right. All right. Did you want to have a comment?
Yeah, please. Thank you. I appreciate the board clarifying that they're gonna change the strategic plan to operate 6 fire stations. It's confusing. Again, I come up again to inquire about the minimum manning part of the deal, because we can't seem to staff West Falmouth unless we have 16 firefighters. And it worries me, and I think it worries a lot of the citizens in West Falmouth that were planning on building this $10 million fire station, or whatever the number is for the fire station, and we're not gonna have enough guys to operate it when it's built. You can change the numbers all you want, but it's gonna take several years to get to those numbers. So if we build this new station, and we don't have anybody to operate it, we feel as though what's gonna happen to West Falmouth? But if you vote in your plan to keep it open, what's gonna happen? Something's gonna give somewhere along the line. We don't have enough guys to operate 6 fire stations. We just don't have them. And if I could just read a couple of paragraphs here. For the past several years, the board has discussed and heard testimony that the minimum shift staffing needed to be raised from 14 to 16 to ensure 24/7 coverage at all 5 fire stations. In fact, both the town manager and the fire chief said at a fall select board meeting that come March or April of 2022, staff would be available to ensure the voluntary overtime, which is in use now, would not be needed to staff West Falmouth. Since the town administration has just reached an agreement with the firefighters local on a new 4-year contract, it has been reported that the administration did not include the increased shift staffing as a management proposal. Could the town manager or the select board explain why the shift staffing increase was not presented? And since the staffing will remain at 14, how can the select board commit to 24/7 staffing of all fire stations will be accomplished? With the increased number of firefighters as a result of the override, it's true that the department roster will show that there are 16 or more firefighters are assigned on paper to each shift. However, multiple reasons, firefighters are absent, such as vacation, sick, personal time, maternity leave, military leave, jury duty, and injured on-duty status, can the chief ensure that the daily on-duty strength will not fall below 16? How many shifts during 2021 were started without any firefighter being off for the reasons stated above? Based on the answer, how can the West Falmouth station be assured to have 24/7 coverage? And we did have a couple of answers to tonight, but could the board explain the expected outcome of tonight's discussion? Is the issue of shift staffing is negotiable subject to the collective bargaining agreement? Since the town has recently agreed and entered into a 4-year agreement with the firefighters union, that the agreement specifically states that the minimum shift strength will remain at 14, and the collective bargaining agreement supersedes the policy. And without opening up the contract, how does the discussion tonight have impact on the current staffing shortages at the stations? Thank you.
Okay. Well, as stated, the policy is the goal of this board, and the hiring is the job of administration, and the hiring is the job of the chief once he has the funding in place to do that hiring. So we set the policy of what we'd like to see happen. Town manager and assistant town manager put it in the budget, and the chief then has the resources to do that staffing. Once those resources are apparent and the boots are on the ground, then maybe we'd be in a position to go back to the firefighters union and ask them if they're ready to commit to that 16 or 18 or 20 or whatever it is that we need to staff these fire stations. But I think at least we're starting with this policy and a goal and making it clear that what we'd like to see happen as an end result, which I think Megan Braga alluded to, that that is our real job, to set that policy and ask for those resources to be allocated to that end. So.
I mean, the reality is you can't, you know, that this is your old job. If there aren't enough people yet, that's a pretty hard bargain to get through, to ask people to commit, ask a union to commit their membership to constant mandatory overtime for that level but we're bringing more people on board so that won't there's nothing that prevents a chief from starting the shift with whatever he wants. You know that number, you know this, means when he can force them, right? So if he has plenty of people to do it, that is certainly something that's going to be, all those things are the subject matter of future collective bargaining. But we're not there yet. And to bargain that now with the personnel, strength that we have, it's just not doable. And so that's why this board has brought this before us to try and remedy this problem.
So we're going to craft a little more policy. Yes, Mr. Scherer. We're way over time, so try to be concise, and I think we're going to wrap it up after your comments. You're going to get the last word, Mr. Scherer.
This time.
Oh, Dan Scherer. You know, the people in West Falmouth have been told off and on, all for 2 years now, that we will get what people, I was told a while ago there wasn't going to be any more overtime because we had 16 people. And I just want to know why, when we got this new rule that you have to have for 2 people in a vehicle, we didn't change the amount of firefighters we have from a guaranteed 14 to 16. Now, we supposedly, the last time we were here, we were told we had 16 people showing up all the time, and so there was no problem. But there has been, because the station hasn't been open all the time. And having a station that we don't know is there is not like you don't have anything. If I say, yeah, I have a boat on the dock, you can use it anytime you want, except when it's not there. You don't have a guarantee you can go fishing. I mean, we need to have the board say, okay, right now, we want 16 people in every shift. That way, West Falmouth can get covered. But saying if we get volunteers, it's fine. I could have had a heart attack last Saturday or Sunday. There would have been nobody there. I mean, let's get down and say, told us, and I'm not going to say lies, but you've been egging us on for 2 years. Now let's make a decision that you will keep that fire station open.
We just did, and also.
I mean, you've got the next 2 or 3 years before Hatfield comes in. But let's do something for those 2 or 3 years.
Exactly what we're talking about here tonight, Mr. Shearer. The hiring is the key, and providing the resources in the budget to do the hiring and facilitate the manpower that we need to give the union the understanding that we're committed to the staffing levels that's required so that they can make the commitment. If you see how much overtime those guys are working right now, you would understand why they would be hesitant to even want to talk about raising the manpower. Ever since they've gone to 14, they've had to work a lot of overtime. And I'm not saying that what you're saying is not important. It certainly is, and we're working towards it. And I understand you've been very patient, but we're almost at the point where the chief is now able to staff that station with regular staff and not using the overtime. And it's getting better each week, but we're not quite there, but we're very close.
But why not make it 16 then now?
Well, I think that's just a little bit further down the road, but yeah, I agree with you. We have to get to 16 at some point soon. And
I mean,
we've done a lot of hiring over these last 2 years, too.
In the
If you
middle of
look
the
at the
pandemic.
history of the last 30 years, and then look what's happened in the last 4 or 5, I think it's a pretty significant difference, and I think we're on the right track. I understand your impatience, and you deserve a fair, straight answer, but this is what we're working with, and we're trying to make improvements and get to the point where we can renegotiate with the firemen. We're just very close, but we're not quite there.
I hope we don't vote for this new station until we have some clarification on what.
Well, that's what we're trying to iron out
part
right
of
now.
our establishment has good covering.
All right.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
could I just, I think we've had some misunderstanding of some of the history. So just a quick reminder as to where we were before the last round of bargaining when the 2-person per apparatus was bargained into the union agreement. At that time, the minimum staffing in the collective bargaining agreement was 10 people. And we routinely had 10 firefighters at the start of shift. So now at a minimum, we have 14. To your point, we've made substantial progress in just a couple of years. And I understand the concern about getting to 16, and I'm not arguing with that. I'm just saying, let's remember that we have added a lot of staff. We have required of the union that they work mandatory overtime shifts to get to a staffing level never seen before in this town, from 10 to 14.
Right. Chief Smith, did you want to give us any parting comments before we go to the next subject?
So I will be brief because we've spent a lot of time on this, but I appreciate all that's been said. I believe it's a very productive discussion. I think we're heading in the right direction. Everything that's been said, yes, trying to manage with the resources that we currently have, but staffing is key in order for us to do our job. No question about it. And I think that with the ongoing commitment by the town to move forward, that's exactly what we're going to be doing. I do take some offense to some things that have been said regarding my staff and the hardworking personnel that have been working to try and, improve staffing. Look at a new station, putting a lot of work into what's been asked of us, and we're continuing to make improvements all along the way. And again, as we've stated here, Many of these issues have been going on for decades. It's not going to be fixed overnight, but we are doing things and that are making improvements, increasing efficiency with the staffing that we have, and we are making strides. We are not at the regular staffing. We've never made any promises that we're going to have 16 on every single day. We said that we're working with the current staff that we have, the hiring that we've gone through, and that we'd have regular staffing as we continue to get these personnel up to shift strength. We've had 2 additional make shift strength this weekend, and we're continuing to see others that are going to be there soon. And we have 2 additional, as I stated, that are going to be going to the Fire Academy. And with the commitment by the town for the 3 additional in this upcoming budget, we're, as soon as that money's available, I'll begin the hiring process again. But I just want to thank, everybody for this ongoing discussion. And whatever asked of us, we will continue to endeavor to follow through on, what we're directed to do. So, thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
And
Thank you.
certainly appreciate the efforts of the fire department and the overtime they've been putting in. Thank you all for coming and sharing your thoughts with us. And now we have the Falmouth Water Stewards request to consider,
Nutrient bylaw. We still didn't do that.
That's the Falmouth Water Stewards.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Got some, thank you. Sorry, Doug.
That's okay. Didn't say that.
My name is Judith McDowell. I'm a retired oceanographer and current president of the Falmouth Water Stewards. And we monitor many ponds around Falmouth. And when we talk to neighbors about fertilizer use, they are surprised that we have a nitrogen bylaw in Falmouth. A very innovative nitrogen bylaw, but everybody thinks it's only for the coast. And it's only the saltwater properties that get notification of the nitrogen bylaw. So we are requesting that a good way to inform everyone in town is to include a flyer in the water bill, every town water bill. And we'll produce the flyer, we'll pay for the flyer, we'll follow it up with an article in the newspaper and a copy of the flyer in the paper. If we could have your permission to produce such a flyer to inform the entire town that fertilizer use is restricted in all wetlands, freshwater ponds, and salt ponds.
I'm going to recuse myself because I'm on the board of the Falmouth Water Stewards. I wasn't there last Wednesday when they voted to bring this to the board, and that's why it was a last-minute notice.
I think it's wonderful.
Yeah, I think the education part has been less efficient, and I think this is going to help a lot.
And then we've observed, and we're monitoring Falmouth ponds for cyanobacteria. There has been an increased occurrence of cyanobacteria blooms in many of the ponds. When we talk to neighbors as we're monitoring, they're shocked. And they say, what could cause this? And they see a beautiful green lawn right up to the shoreline, and we say, that could be, that is part of the problem.
Yeah.
So if we could just educate the public, I'd make a flyer that is smaller than this, but that would fit right inside the water bill.
Can I make just one suggestion?
Yes.
I think all this is great information. I just
This
noticed.
is just a draft.
Okay, the second to the last, well, all the bullets except for the second to the last one seem to be guidelines or directions. The second to last one just says excess nutrients on lawns flow into ponds and disrupt ecological balance. I just think it would make more sense to put that towards the bottom with the rest of the paragraph.
Sure.
Good point.
People were just scratching things down at the meeting last week.
No, I think it's all really great
But
information.
we wanted to incorporate everything that is covered in the bylaw.
And when do the water bills go out?
In April, May.
Okay.
So if it's agreeable to the board, we'll have staff members work to implement this.
If you think you can do it in time, and
Do you know how many bills there are?
I don't have that at my fingertips. We'll have to get back to you on that.
Okay, I'll email
It's
you.
not the whole town.
I move that we support this initiative.
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great,
4
thank
with
you.
1 abstention.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Judy.
And it was
One abstention.
fascinating to hear.
Yeah.
Thanks. Thanks for all your
So
hard work.
4 to 1.
That's right. Just like last time at our executive session.
4 to 1.
Consent agenda, does anybody have anything on the consent agenda that they would like to hold for discussion?
I just had a couple typographical errors I caught on the shellfish regulations.
Okay,
On page 4, number 6, the last line, it says, note, family shellfish areas are not open to, and it has too many O's in the two, it's the wrong time, 2. And then on number 8, the first line, October 1st through October 31st, there's a comma, then it says on. I think that on just is not supposed to be there. I think it should just say October 1st through 31st, 1 bushel per week.
okay.
Do you want me to pass that down? Or do you
Oh.
have more?
Nope, I think that's it.
I'll pass it down, just so they have it.
This is the consent agenda, so we're gonna try to cover, how many of them?
Three
Okay,
things.
fine, so we'll catch them all together. All right.
So with those edits, I would move approval of the consent agenda items, unless someone's holding any.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Can I just make a note that I think the minutes of the meeting were done very well. I didn't have any edits to those.
Well, that's next, right?
Well, I thought
I
that was-
had a couple of comments on the
Yeah, I have a
minutes.
couple of
Oh,
edits
dear.
as well.
Well,
Well, and mine was more format, if I can I go ahead and make my
Yes,
comments?
please.
So throughout the notes, it will say, like, it'll say Diana Mata, and it will say the first name or Chair Brown. But then everywhere else, it just says the person's last name. Like Suso says, Briggs says, O'Keefe says. I think we need to say Mr. Suso. I find that offensive.
Okay,
So
Good
I
point.
think we do need to say Mr. Suso, Mr. O'Keefe, Mr. Johnson Staub, Ms. English Braga. That was really my only comment.
okay, then I don't feel so bad for saying they were good.
No, I think it's just a style thing. I don't think it's necessarily, we don't call people that, right? So that was my only comment.
unless you're in grade school on the playground.
Yeah.
All right, well, I have just a.
Yes,
I have
Sam?
a couple of edits. On page 2, we're looking at the Monday, January 31st, 2022, open meeting, open session. On page 2, in the, what would be, I guess, the third paragraph on that page, where it says Dave Moriarty, Falmouth, said Leukemia Association is having a virtual, and I think it's, just get rid of that, having,
Yeah,
virtual open house. And then I have one more edit on page 5. The very last line, Patterson motion to include draft articles 1 through, I think it's only 33. How many are in this warrant?
I'll have to check.
Well, let's put the right number
Yeah,
down. That's
We'll
all.
put the right number in, whatever it is.
Thank you.
It's in the 30s, but you're right.
okay.
I thought it was 34, but I could be wrong.
Well, whatever it should be. And with that, I would move approval and release for public access.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
On the executive session minutes of
Excuse me.
Saturday, March the 5th, I have no edits per se, but I don't see any reason why we can't release those.
Has everything been signed off on that, Peter?
Yes, contract's been signed.
Yep.
So unless somebody has any edits, I would move approval and release for public access.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. And Mr. Suso, did you want to make any comments on the supplemental
A little
report?
follow-up, thank you. The April Town Meeting warrant booklet has been transmitted to the printer with all recommendations and explanations complete. I want to thank members of the board for your assistance in completing the review and confirmation process for the proposed Eversource easements to allow positive recommendation via your special meeting on March 9th. We've also received the schedule for town meeting precinct meetings And as per standard procedure, we plan to have appropriate staff members attend to answer questions and follow up with information. And as a reminder, by protocol, the board has also looked at potentially attending those as you deem appropriate. I was pleased to join the Finance Committee meeting on this past Monday as they concluded their final deliberations on the April town meeting financial warrant articles, and I thank them for their thoughtful and diligent work. And the board's next regular business meeting is scheduled for 2 weeks from tonight, Monday, March 28th. And lastly, Happy Pi Day to all, as it's 3.14.
Where's our pie?
I forgot the pie.
Down, yeah.
There's a lot of decimal places to follow, you know.
Those are the three
Shall we
most
give it a
important.
Thank you.
But please don't try.
Select board members have any reports they'd like to give?
Just to mention a couple of meetings that I met, I actually zoomed in on the Housing Assistance Corporation's presentation on village-centered housing examples that they do. And I mentioned the Union Station is one of the architects that's been pretty active in designing those sorts of things, but it was quite informative and I think relevant to Falmouth. The fire department had their retirement recognition and Officer of the Year ceremony. That was really a nice occasion, and I know that.
Glad you got to go. I didn't even notice that invitation.
Came as a letter.
Yeah,
Yeah, it might have gotten tucked into
Police
something.
department, yeah.
Came as a letter in our mail at some point.
Sorry I missed it.
Angie was there.
All right, good.
Officer of the Year Award?
Yeah, and the retirement, yeah, and so, but anyway, it was a nice ceremony, and it's,
Wait, Doug, you sat next to me.
yeah, I was thinking the same thing.
Oh, you're talking about the police. I
Yeah,
thought you
you
said fire
said-
department.
You said
I'm
fire
sorry.
department,
I just
Sam,
said
and
fire,
I said
excuse me, the police
Yes.
department.
Okay.
Guys, you're falling
No
apart
wonder I
here.
got-
Oh, my gosh.
There was a Zoom presentation by the Buzzards Bay Coalition on climate vulnerability that was actually quite good, that I zoomed in on. And then the last is the Cape and Islands Legislative Association breakfast this past Friday, where virtually all of our legislators, and I know Angie and Doug were both there as well, but it was nice to hear from all of our legislative delegation on what's going on up at the State House in Boston.
Especially nice to hear that they're still so interconnected and cooperative regardless of party affiliation, which has always been the case on the Cape. And I like the way one guy framed it, that we're not the Democratic Party or the Republican Party, we're the Cape Cod Party. I like it.
Agreed.
Discussion of future agenda items. Does any board members have particular items? Yes,
I
ma'am?
have a long list.
Oh, good.
One, I did not reply to the email about the precinct meetings because I didn't want to break open meeting law.
Okay.
That we can respond about, because it's nothing that we're.
Purely scheduling and administrative,
Purely scheduling.
right.
So I know it gets tricky, but
Well, looking at what was on our agenda today
I know,
about,
better to be careful.
yeah, so, okay, well, I guess I could just email and we can figure out who's gonna go to which ones. I don't wanna, yeah, I know we can go to multiple ones.
But we don't have to worry about quorums at those meetings.
That was gonna be my
Because
concern.
it's mostly informational and we're not espousing
Okay.
positions.
We're not taking
All right,
a
well, then I'll
vote,
just
we're
go
not-
to the
We're
ones
not
that I-
deliberating.
Okay,
We're just informing people of why the board might have voted a particular way or sharing our insight.
okay. I really liked what happened at the meeting on Friday that Sam just mentioned. I think it'd be great if we invite our legislators to come to a meeting, give them 20 minutes to present on whatever they think is relevant to us that we might be interested in.
We haven't done that for a while.
Part of that leads into another agenda item that if we have the legislators come in and tell us about something that's going on or things that we need to keep our eye on, I'd like us to also maybe have agenda items about long-term projects, like what's coming down the pipeline that we should be thinking about, even if it's not gonna be for a few months or I don't know, maybe a year's too far out, but at least a few months. So that way we can start thinking about whatever.
You mean like sewer outfall pipes and big town projects and so forth?
Yeah, town projects, or if we know, like, for example, the right of first refusal, there was a short time from when we first got that to when we had to vote on it, and then it came back to us. And just, I don't know how much more research, honestly, I would have done beforehand, but I might have done some more. So just those kinds of things, big term projects. So then I was also wondering about creating options for having the agenda further in advance. I know that with working full-time, it's difficult for me to get the agenda on a Friday afternoon and only have Monday essentially to be able to ask people about things, because if people in the town are working Monday through Friday, I would not want to call them over the weekend to ask them to do more work when I do have Monday. But again, working full-time, it's also difficult sometimes to try to find time to meet with people. So even if it's just an idea, a draft of the agenda like a week before would be really helpful.
How about if we were not, well, a draft of the agenda could be possible because we have been starting to have 2 agendas prepared. The details are somewhat difficult to
Yeah.
provide all, but on larger subjects, maybe we can send advance, like say for instance, if there's a Mayflower Wind project and it's got a lot of documentation that we need to read, maybe when we get that in hand, we can just pass it along and say, this is potential for discussion on, April 14th or whatever.
Right.
When we think we might talk about it. And then it can be in the packet again later, but just by email when you get it, just so we have a little more chance to do our homework.
Yeah, that'd be great. Couple more things. We've had a lot of people email us and ask us why we don't apply for grants and things, and there's obviously various reasons why we don't do things. But I think it'd be really important for us to have a list that people can look at of what we have applied to. And I imagine that might not be too hard to put together because we should be keeping a list of money that we're receiving. I don't know if it makes sense to just discuss that one day at a meeting or to put that somewhere on the town website, just so people know that we are doing some things. I mean, part of it is just, we're just doing our jobs and people should know that we're just doing our jobs. But then there's another aspect of people want to see what we're doing, sometimes behind the scenes. It's something as simple as, these are the grants that we've received, this is how much they were for, and a sentence on what they did for the town. I think people would appreciate seeing that.
We had that discussion last year about, should we be looking at hiring somebody to do grant writing? And it was just a concept discussion. And we talked about the fact that department heads write their own grants, and maybe we could do a little bit better on, assisting them. But we didn't really nail it down, so maybe we do want to revisit that.
Yeah, and in the meantime, just what we do have, I think, people are always gonna find something wrong with what we're doing, right? And so if every once in a while we can say, we've done something really good and we've saved the town some money, it would just be nice to showcase that in some way.
Okay. Do you want?
No, I was just gonna say, when we have that discussion, it'd be good to have the data in advance.
Yes.
Like what grants we, just so we can see, like, is a particular department, really gangbusters, and could we maybe look to focus, another department maybe needs to strengthen it a bit, so.
I would also ask that the Director of Finance be at that meeting in case there are particular questions around grants. Be really helpful.
Okay.
Almost done.
Mention that the sustainability director at Hui actually keeps a catalog of things and is particularly asked to look for those kinds of grants. Looking ahead, looking at how you can actually bring money in to do, sort of forward-looking planning types of things for various initiatives. So I think it would be a natural for that position if and when we ever get somebody into it.
Maybe we could have Stephanie come in and tell us about some of the work that she does, a 10-minute presentation.
I think that would be an excellent agenda item, quite honestly. She was quite sharp.
And I think we need an agenda item for discussion of the DEI officer position, having seen in the newspaper that the school is intending to go on their own with hiring their own full-time position. Kind of puts us in a position where we need to consider that as well, I think. So if we could take that up soon, because we don't want to leave that job unattended. So maybe on the 28th, we could just discuss what the board's feeling is on that.
And I know that a press release was put out, but I think it's also just important to remind people that George Spivey has stepped up to help us through this transition time, both in the schools
So grateful.
and in the town. And I also believe that Seon is going to stay on working with the schools. So we are not letting go of the position. We have it covered until we refill the position. And I just think it's important to say that.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Almost done.
Okay.
We've talked a couple times about putting together some sort of onboarding packet for select board members. And so I just kind of wanted to put it out there that I'm planning on actually working to put that together. I think it makes sense to have that before the next election. So since we have time between now and when that election's going to
Great
be.
idea. I had kept a list of some things I thought
You
should go in
emailed-
there.
I think you emailed.
Yeah,
it
I
as well.
did. I'll try and email it again.
Okay,
for
well,
what
I
it's
saved
worth,
it,
but-
so.
Okay, perfect.
And sometime after town meeting, I would like to have a robust discussion about affordable housing options. and what we can do. If we find that the burden of trying to figure it out is too big for us as a town, then maybe we hire a consultant to do a lot of the work of looking at town-owned parcels, state-owned parcels, looking at refurbishing old places. I really think we're beyond the days of, oh, that's too expensive. I think not having affordable housing is now too expensive, and so I think we really need to step it up.
And I'd like to include the consideration of maybe if those little tiny houses could be included in the accessory apartment bylaw somehow. Maybe we could consider bringing that back to the planning board for consideration.
I think we have to look at all of the options.
Absolutely.
And I plan to bring it to the Affordable Housing Committee next week to start doing very, very preliminary research on what's worked in similar-sized towns and other places on the Cape and even in the Commonwealth. But then after that, like, we have to do something because we can't just keep talking about it. So, now I'm done. Thank you.
All right.
All good stuff.
Good list.
Yep.
Anybody else? Any more
Do you want me to
comments
pass your
or
list over?
reports?
In case anybody wasn't taking notes.
I also put on here sign variants, but that's not really important.
What do you want to talk about with the sign variants?
I just don't understand the importance of the sign variants.
I mean, why it comes to us?
Yeah.
Oh, well, just imagine if people could make any size sign and put them anywhere they wanted.
That's
But
the
they
issue.
they have to come to the select board? There's not another entity that can look
Yeah,
at
there's
it?
this,
Well,
there's
we
a,
used to have a design review committee which handled signs, but they kind of just faded away by attrition, and there was not that much interest in a committee just to do that, so it fell back to us.
Okay.
Plus, off-premise signs, I think, have always come to the board, so you don't proliferate
Right.
signs on properties that are not owned by the same business, and they pop up everywhere, so they come to the board to help control that. Given all the events we have going on in town, it would be a potential sign nightmare.
It's not really that big a schedule burden either.
well, with the consent agenda now,
Yeah.
most of those things are gonna go under there, which is much better than having 15 things that we have 15 presentations. Like, we don't need to see that, so.
I move we adjourn.
Did you want to make some comments on anything, or you just? You looked like you wanted to say something, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay,
Nope, just checking with,
everybody here.
wondering.
Well, they had their chance at public comment.
All right, very good.
I second the motion to adjourn, or maybe Nancy did already.
All those in favor of adjournment?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Look at that. Hold on.